This free and public episode of the Lesbian Romantic podcast would not be possible. It would simply not be here without the help and support of patrons around the world. Thank you so much, everyone. I am so grateful for your help. And if you too would like to help this podcast keep going and you're a super fan of the podcast, then go to patreon.com/lesbianromantic, where you can find out all about the Bells and Whistles Theater, which is kind of like the creative home of this podcast now, with lots and lots of extras. If you want to send a one-time gift, you can do that too at lesbianromantic.com/support. Welcome to the Lesbian Romantic podcast. This is Connection Revealed, Part 33. September 23rd, 2063. San Francisco, Fire Blue Territory, North American Province, 10:30 a.m. local time. I am in uncharted territory, Michelle thought as she shifted in her seat, staring out of the window. Literally. As they traversed steep hills, glimpses of the ocean periodically revealed themselves. Jade's hand was warm in hers, bringing a sense of calm and comfort she'd never thought possible. Especially not here, especially not now. Jade had looked absolutely miserable, and after a while, Michelle just couldn't take it anymore. Unable to talk to Jade in the car, she had reached out and grabbed her hand instead. Michelle was surprised by how easy it had been. Though her heart had raced at first, it had still felt like a natural thing to do. This was definitely something new for her. What has changed, she wondered, not for the first time in the past few hours. Had it been the allergic reaction? Was it somehow still affecting her brain? Did she have actual brain damage? She didn't think that was possible. She hadn't experienced shortness of breath for that long. Was it the medication they had given her? Had they injected her with something at the hospital that would make her lose her mind? No. Michelle was too aware of the change for that. Why this overanalyzing? Michelle thought. If this were a book, she would be annoyed with the author for all the overthinking the main character was doing. Was there anything more annoying? Michelle had to stop herself from shaking her head. It had been a long time since she had thought about books. As a kid, she had loved them, but her parents had not. Reading led to thinking, and there was little room for thinking in Michelle's family. There was only knowing what was right and what was wrong. Michelle was glad that her parents couldn't see her here. They would be ashamed of her now. They were already ashamed of her since the day Louise Thomas had betrayed them all. Jade squeezed Michelle's hand and Michelle looked up at her. Jade pointed ahead of them. Michelle peered through the front window, narrowing her eyes at the sunlight glimmering on the ocean. The remains of the infamous Golden Gate Bridge towered over the bay. Michelle had seen plenty of satellite pictures, but she had never seen it, or what was left of it, from this angle. It was a beautiful sight, in a creepy way. The bridge was a not-so-metaphorical symbol of the lost connection between two groups of people. Symbols matter, Michelle reflected, deep in thought. A notion was slowly taking shape in her mind, but she couldn't quite grasp it yet. That wedding ring, Michelle suddenly recalled. She still hadn't received an answer from Jade about the ring. Was Jade not married? Or had she been in the past? You're not entitled to that information, she told herself. You're not entitled to know everything about someone. She wrinkled her nose as she remembered the background check she had asked Garcia to do. Was everything she wanted to know waiting for her in her inbox? Wait until Jade finds out all there is to know about you, she thought. She won't want to hold hands with you then. She pushed everything aside, determined to stay in the present moment. Her thumb gently stroked Jade's hand, relishing in its softness and warmth. I won't be the one to walk away from this, Michelle thought fiercely. Not this time. She swallowed hard. Her mind was truly out of control, behaving like an animal that had escaped its prison. But who had put it there? Her or her parents? We're almost there, Lucas said from the front of the car. This time, Lucas didn't turn around to meet their gaze. Michelle couldn't help but smile at that. She had noticed how uncomfortable Lucas had been when she had seen her and Jade holding hands earlier. We've lost a lot of time, Jade said. I need that time back to analyze my data. Michelle turned her head toward Jade, surprised by her sudden brazenness. She liked it. A lot. But it also reminded her that there was more at stake. What would you like me to do? Eleanor Lucas replied, still staring straight ahead. Activate my time machine? If you have that technology working properly, yes, that would be amazing, Jade replied immediately. But if it's still in testing, I'd prefer it if you could just give me a few extra hours in the morning. I can work overnight and discuss my findings with your scientists in the early morning. Michelle smiled. Lucas sighed, but didn't refuse the request right away. Michelle was surprised to see the rebel leader even considering it. Surely Lucas had to be under a lot of pressure to get Jade and Michelle out of her territory. Okay, but on one condition, Lucas finally said. Jade's fingers tightened around Michelle's hand, and Michelle squeezed back in encouragement, strangely happy to let Jade take control in this situation. What condition? Jade asked calmly. I need you to go in there alone, Lucas said after another moment of silence. No way in hell, Michelle blurted out. She couldn't believe Lucas was trying to pull this again. There was no way Michelle was going to let her separate them once more. Lucas threw an annoyed glance at her through the rearview mirror. She was about to speak, but Jade beat her to it. This is getting ridiculous, she said, her tone strained, yet still polite. You've done this to us before, and it didn't end well. I'm not trying to do anything to you, Lucas replied, her words coming out too fast and with too much emotion. In the past, Michelle would have been elated. She would have relished in watching the rebel leader unravel. She would have jumped at the opportunity to accelerate it, benefit from it, and take even more of an upper hand. Jade leaned forward. Yes, you do, and I'm getting tired of these games, she said. Lucas huffed and laughed bitterly. Really, who's playing games here? Michelle saw the driver glance in Lucas's direction, surprised by this outburst. There was so much to work with here. But instead of getting excited, Michelle felt a wave of sadness wash over her. Why can't I stay with Jade? Michelle asked. Lucas met her gaze in the rearview mirror once more. Her gray eyes seemed darker than before as she stated, You're military. So what? Jade retorted. I am not leaving Michelle's side. This is not what we agreed to. Sighing, Lucas turned in her seat and looked straight at them. Look, lovebirds, she said sternly. Becker is not going into that compound. Michelle spoke up before Jade could, asking, Where do I go in the meantime? She knew studying that data was crucial. It might even be their only chance to avoid prison when they returned home. Lucas stared at Michelle for a long moment before speaking. You're coming with me, she said. Michelle raised an eyebrow. With you? Yes, we're going to visit someone, the rebel leader replied, her expression oddly neutral. Michelle leaned closer. Someone? Jade cleared her throat, her earlier confidence now evaporated. I don't trust you, she told Lucas firmly. We stay together. There's no one else for us to see here." Lucas ignored Jade and continued staring at Michelle. She widened her eyes and tilted her head, waiting for Michelle to catch on. Michelle looked back at Jade. She noticed her cheeks were flushed with anger. As realization finally dawned on Michelle, she inwardly chided herself for not catching on sooner. But then again, the likelihood of it being true seemed far-fetched. Was this all just another one of Lucas's twisted games? Michelle narrowed her eyes in suspicion as she weighed her options. "Who else is coming with us?" she finally asked, shooting a glance towards the driver. Lucas followed her gaze and pressed her lips together. "Just you and me." The driver shifted uncomfortably in their seat. "No," Jade reiterated firmly. "Hey," Michelle said, turning to Jade and squeezing her hand again. "There's not much for me to do while you study that data. I understand why she doesn't want me near her scientists." "Why?" Jade replied, shaking her head vigorously. "I'm just as much of a danger as you are." Michelle smiled. "We all know that's not true. You're not even in the army." "I can still share everything I see," Jade protested. "I can be a spy just like you." Chuckling, Michelle replied, "I know, but you're not. Nobody will ever know you were in there." "They won't know if you go in there either," Jade pleaded. "It's just different," Michelle repeated. She glanced in Lucas's direction, indicating their complicated history. "She can't let me go in there. I understand that." But Jade wasn't convinced. She was a smart woman and not easily deceived. "And wherever you're going is acceptable?" she asked incredulously. Michelle caught a glimpse of Lucas, whose face had paled at Jade's words. Jade had a valid point. There was no safe place within rebel territory for Lucas to take her without betraying her people. If Lucas was planning to take Michelle to Louise for whatever insane reason, she would be taking a huge risk. The only sensible thing for Lucas to do would be to throw Michelle in jail or drive her straight to the border and kick her out. Lucas had some sort of personal stake in this, and Michelle had no idea what it was. But she had a sense that Lucas desperately needed some form of confrontation. Or maybe it was confirmation? Michelle was curious enough to want to find out which one it was. Additionally, the mere thought of seeing Louise again caused her heart rate to quicken. She also had unfinished business and a story without a satisfying ending. Louise had taken everything from her, yet Michelle never had a chance to hold her accountable for it. "I do trust her," Michelle said slowly, her words sounding foreign even to herself. "She has nothing to gain from keeping us here. She's doing us a favor. You need to study that data. And I am going with her." This was part 33 of Connection Revealed. If you want the full experience of this podcast with all the bells and whistles, music, sound effects, extra scenes, vlogs, the In the Wings Behind the Scenes podcast, you can become a member of the Bells and Whistles Theater, the creative home of this podcast, and everything around it. Go to patreon.com/lesbianromantic and sign up for your exclusive seat today. I just released a Valentine's Day extra scene, fully produced for theater members, and I can't wait to get started on another short story that will be exclusively available in the Bells and Whistles Theater. So if you're a super fan, there's only one place to go if you want to help this podcast keep going, and if you want more. Thank you to all the patrons over the years who signed up and who have supported this podcast. It is because of you that I'm still around creating this small niche show for a small audience. I couldn't do it without your support, so thank you so much. All right, that is all for this public feed for this week. I will be back here in 2 weeks with part 34 of Connection Revealed. To all the patrons out there, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. To all the listeners around the world, thank you for spending time with me. It's always a privilege, and I will see you again soon.